Mark. We'll pick up the count at T-minus 3 minutes, 30 seconds. Mark, 3 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Roger, 2 and 3.
The first step was the decision that this nation's first venture into manned spaceflight should be a peaceful civilian effort.
Here our intent is to launch him, to determine to what extent he can perform a useful function in outer space, and then of course we want to recover him safely.
These, ladies and gentlemen, are the nation's Mercury astronauts.
A man, in order to take this type of flight, must be in superb physical shape, in good condition, as an athlete must be.
The pressure suit consists of a hard white helmet with a visor, a transparent one, rather reminiscent of a medieval knight in some ways, and a rubber suit which doesn't look at all rubbery. It's quite light and flexible and has this silvery outer coating.
Well, I think the most important problems have been just in learning about the vehicle and getting ready for it. If there is a emotional problem of any sort, it is just in getting the chance to fly. They're tired of waiting. They're ready to go, and they've been ready to go for some time. And if there's any psychological problem for them, it is the problem of waiting, of getting the chance to do this very exciting thing. Well, certainly the major training problems will remain the same as they are. That is, to know the vehicle, to know all the systems very well, to know how to navigate, how to control attitude.
The tests out at Dr. Lovelace's place at Albuquerque out there, certainly some of the tests we had out there were the most trying. And it's rather difficult to pick one, because if you figure how many openings there are on the human body and how far you can go in any one of them.
You gave it away.
now you answer which one would be the toughest for you.
Well, I think John Glenn answered the question pretty well. To perhaps carry it a little bit further. We're not playing games. This is serious business. And you can't just face up to this thing and say, we're going to, as Mr. Donlan said, put $1 million in a can and fire it into space. It's nothing like that at all. You don't make a program out of something as crude as that. This is a professional program. We're trying to do something with it. And most people have asked me, why are you in this idiotic program? I immediately say, if you'll take a little bit of time to think about it, to study it, you realize that this is something that we're very serious about.
The Redstone booster that powered the first American astronaut into space demonstrates the principles which were first developed by the three major pioneers in space: Dr. Goddard in the United States, Tsiolkovsky in Russia, and Dr. Obert in Germany. The development of the Redstone itself began in 1951. This work was headed by Dr. Werner von Braun, the German-born rocket pioneer who now is an American citizen. The first Redstone flight was made in 1953 and the second some 5 months later. Since then, more than 50 of these rockets have been launched with a very high rate of success, so that the Redstone today is named Old Reliable. To reach the required performance, the tanks were elongated about 6 feet, providing more fuel and liquid oxygen capacity, and in this way we added more than 20 seconds of burning time. Its thrust is now 78,000 pounds. A new instrument compartment and a special spacecraft adapter section were designed, and these contain the pressurized instrument compartment located between the fuel tanks and the capsule. In addition to the normal acceptance firing tests of the rocket engine, the completed vehicle for this manned flight and for all others in the Mercury series was captive fired on the ground prior to shipment to the launching site. Many measurements were taken to guarantee proper performance of the engine. In one test, a Mercury Redstone motor was repeatedly ground fired for a total duration of 15 times the normal burning time.
The booster rocket for Project Mercury's manned orbital space flights is the Atlas Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, an Air Force weapon system with a 9,000-mile range that also doubles as a launch vehicle for space missions. Atlas towers nearly 9 stories high and weighs over 250,000 pounds at launch time. Its 3 engines operate less than 5 minutes, but during that time they consume enough propellants to power a 4-engine jetliner on nearly 6 transcontinental flights. They deliver 360,000 pounds of thrust, approximately 3.5 million horsepower, as they drive Atlas to speeds near 18,000 miles an hour, 13 times faster than a rifle bullet. The man known as the father of the Atlas, the man instrumental in its design and development, is Belgium-born aeronautical engineer Karl J. Bossert, technical director of General Dynamics Astronautics in San Diego, California, where Atlas is produced.
Well, we started the Atlas some 16 years ago now. As a matter of fact, our first proposals were in the end of 1945, and we got our first study contract in April 46. We did have to introduce several new ideas in the Atlas in order to make this real big step in the art, state of the art, you see. One of them was that we decided to steer the missile by swiveling the rocket motors. other words, use the motors, you might say, as rudders. This was new, and the reason we did that was, well, there were several, but let's say that the main one was that it's more efficient propulsion-wise. Then still another innovation was that we went to a type structure, namely a structure that depends on internal pressure to get its strength and to get its rigidity. We had a structure that is lighter than any conceived before or since then, and also has proven to be very reliable. Whether I'm there or not, I will be greatly elated when the astronaut goes up and makes a few turns around the world.
The guys in the research business in the Pilotless Aircraft Research Division had found out that, of course, that there's a lot of energy has to be dissipated when the spacecraft enters back into the atmosphere, that the blunt body was the most efficient way to do that. Second place, it was obvious from all sorts of tests the Air Force had done that men can sustain accelerations better, more or less, what's called eyeballs in. That the forces are in, like you're lying on your back. You put that together with the blunt body. Then there were parachutes available that quite dependable parachutes. We had a lot of experience with these solid propellant motors that you could do the retrofire business to slow yourself up so you could re-enter the air. So suddenly we had all the fundamental elements that it took. Now, then it's just up to someone to shape these things together, package them, and arrange them geometrically so that all these things fit. Well, that was essentially my job, was to package all these separate elements that other people had worked out and selected.
The cabin is so constructed that on each side are equipment bays. The main and reserve parachutes are stored in a cylinder in front of him. 2 infrared horizon scanner units are located in a narrow section at the end of the spacecraft. The instrument panel in front of the astronaut is grouped as to functions.
It was a port. Yeah, I suppose. I'm not quite sure the difference between a porthole and a window, except the porthole is generally small and the window is large, I say. But and if you remember, Mercury ended up with a thing called a periscope, and it turned out to be not a very satisfactory device. But you know, it was clear that the man, he's got 2 eyes, the best instruments there ever were. Those two eyes, and to deny those eyes a port to look at is kind of silly.
The astronaut can control his own attitude, aided by a periscope below the panel and by a window above. From the window, he can see the horizon back of the capsule, and through the periscope, he has a view of the Earth.
It was unexpectedly more stable, on-point stability than anyone had thought. Now that's a very satisfying feeling to know that if you ran out of all your control gases, the damn thing was going to turn around in the right direction anyway. Well, the real shape was to take care of the heating problem. Now, it was theorized that it would be stable in this position also, but there were a lot of people that would not have thought you could become 180 degrees wrong and then turn yourself around. But it did.
Between the reentry face and the cabin proper is a 4-foot rubberized fiberglass skirt, which forms an air cushion to break the capsule's landing force. After the main parachute is open, the heat shield is released from the capsule and the bag filled with air. Upon impact, air escapes through the holes in the skirt, attenuating the force of impact.
I was interested in the physiology of the man simply because it was a mechanical system as far as I was concerned, and he had to be supported mechanically. And so I was interested in the body structure and how the couch should be made and that sort of thing. And of course the man had to be positioned properly in the spacecraft. I think that's a good thing about being young. You're not, nothing frightens one when you're young. You know, you can lick the world.
That little race between Gagarin and me was really close. Obviously, their objectives, their capabilities for orbital flight were greater than ours at that particular point. We eventually caught up and went past. We had flown a chimpanzee called Ham in a Redstone Mercury combination, and everything had worked perfectly except there was a relay which at the end of the powered flight was supposed to eject the escape tower because it was no longer needed, separate it from the Mercury capsule and eject it. For some reason, with the Ham's flight, it fired, but it did not separate itself. So the chimp was lifted to another 10 or 15 miles in altitude, another 20 or 30 miles in range. There was absolutely nothing wrong with anything else wrong with the mission. So our recommendation strongly was, okay, let's put Shepard in the next one. Everything worked fine. So the thing happens again, no big deal. Shepard goes a little higher. Werner said no. He said, we want everything absolutely right. So we flew another unmanned mission before Gagarin flew, then his flight, and then mine. So it was really touch and go there. If we'd put me in that unmanned mission, then we would have actually flown first. But it was tight.
As all of you know, yesterday, Mr. Robert R. Gilruth, the director of the Space Task Group, announced that 3 of the 7 astronauts had been selected to begin specialized work with the spacecraft and with the people that would be involved in the initial manned Mercury flights.
7 guys competing for the first job, or whatever that turned out to be. 7 guys going for that one job. So on the one hand, there was a sense of friendliness and maybe in some support, but on the other hand, hey, I hope the rest of you guys are happy because I'm going to make the first flight. Bob walked in, closed the door, and was very matter of fact. He said, well, you know, we've got to decide who's going to make the first flight, and I don't want to pinpoint publicly at this stage one individual. Within the organization, I want everyone to know that we will designate the first flight and the second flight and the backup pilot. But beyond that, we won't make any public decisions. So he said, Shepard gets the first flight, Grissom gets the second flight, and Glenn is the backup for both of these 2 suborbital missions. We pulled up in front of the launch pad. Of course, it was dark. The liquid oxygen was venting out from the redstone. Searchlights all over the place. And I remember saying to myself, well, I'm not going to see this redstone again. And you know, pilots love to go out and kick the tires. And it was sort of like reaching out and kicking the tires on the redstone. Because I stopped and looked at it, you know, to look back and up at this beautiful rocket. And thought, well, okay, Buster, let's go and get the job done.
All right, lift off and the clock is started. Yes, sir, reading you loud and clear. This is Freedom 7. The fuel is go, 1.2 G. Cabin at 14 PSI. Oxygen is go.
I was surprised that the liftoff, that the ignition of the redstone and the liftoff were as smooth as they were. I really had expected more noise and more vibration. Fortunately, we had provided enough padding around the earphones of the helmet, so the noise was not a problem. And the old Redstone itself was smooth enough so that it was a very pleasant liftoff.
On the periscope, what a beautiful view. I bet it is. Cloud cover over Florida, 3 to 4 tenths near the eastern coast. Obscures up through Hatteras.
When I first looked from the instrument panel, using a gyroscopic indication down to the periscope itself, I must admit it sort of took my breath away. It was a beautiful view. All of a sudden, during the period of the middle of the weightlessness, I realized that somebody was going to ask me that question. So I said to myself, you'd better figure out an answer. Seriously, as we have said before, during the short periods of weightlessness that we've experienced during our training period, it's quite a pleasant sensation. Particularly so after the accelerations of the booster ride. We find that we have no difficulty in maneuvering ourselves, in controlling ourselves, and it all in all really is, at this point, certainly, given us no difficulty at all. I made ready for landing somewhere in the altitude, about 5,000 feet altitude. By this I mean that I opened the faceplate of the helmet, took off the hose which provides the sealing gas, oxygen for the faceplate seal. I took off the chest strap, and I removed my knee restraints. The reason I did this was to allow myself a little more freedom of action in case I had to make some rapid maneuvers after landing. The landing was somewhere between 10 and 12 G, as has been indicated by our records. It certainly wasn't any more uncomfortable than a catapult shot on an aircraft carrier.
And therefore, I want to again express my congratulations to Alan Shepard. We're very proud of him. And this decoration, which has gone from the ground up here.
I am very, very mindful at this moment of the honor which has been bestowed upon me, an honor which is really one which should go to the hundreds of people who made my flight possible. We have been working approximately 2 years, as you know, on a devoted effort to put a man in space. And it is really to these hundreds of people that the accolades of today should go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have one prepared statement to make. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration now tentatively plans to attempt to launch the second manned suborbital spaceflight at 6 a.m. Friday, July 21, 1961.
Okay, have a good trip, Bob. We'll see you below.
Roger.
All right. Drop. Ignition. Liftoff.
Roger, this is Liberty Bell 7. The clock is operating.
Loud and clear, Jose. Don't cry too much.
Okie doke. Okay, it's a nice ride up to now.
Loud and clear.
Roger. And I'm going to try this left yaw maneuver. About all I can really see is clouds. I haven't seen any land anyplace yet.
Oh, Roger, you're on the window. Are you trying a yaw maneuver?
I'm trying a yaw maneuver and I'm on the window. It's such a fascinating view out the window, you just can't help but look out that way.
Advised that as a result of communications with Gus Grissom floating in the water, he's told his recovery helicopters that he intends to finish his checklist and make sure that everything is secure in the cockpit before he opens the hatch to come out. And this sounds like typical Gus Grissom. He was not about to do anything until he was sure everything had been done and in a businesslike manner.
I was just laying there minding my own business, and then pow! The hatch went. I looked up and I saw nothing but blue sky and water starting to come in over the sill. So I tossed my helmet off, and the only two moves I remember making was tossing my helmet off and grabbing the instrument panel and pulling myself out. I only remember grabbing the instrument panel. I don't even remember going out the door.
We had a very successful flight. The Atlas booster that we were using at that time, that we used it for that launch, actually had a little hang-up. The first stage did not stage. In other words, it did not come off. There was no malfunction as far as, but it continued to hang on, which meant that it carried somewhat more weight than it would have had. We got all the instrumentation data and so forth and analyzed it. And the shield showed fairly minimal of ablation and heat soakback. And thus we were able to take this data, give it to the McDonnell people and tell them that, hey, they could now take the shield down to a 1-inch thickness that was finally used for the production. And an hour or so before launch, I went to the periscope and took a look out. It was really just terrible weather there. Overcast, raining, wind blowing, and so forth. We went on and launched it anyway. The vehicle rose up and everything went haywire. we began to conclude that there was some kind of a structural problem at the nose end of the Atlas booster. Up in the nose end where the adapter attached, it was reasoned that there was some structural weakness up in that area, and I think we ended up making some modifications to the adapter as well as some heavy strengthening or reinforcing material was put on the Atlas.
Say we had superb performance exhibited today on the part of all the various teams and on the part of the equipment. 2 pilot teams have been selected for Project Mercury's initial manned orbital space flight. John H. Glenn Jr. has been selected for the first flight, with Scott Carpenter acting as backup.
Very, very happy about the selection, needless to say, and honored that Scott and I can work as closely as we can together. It's obviously still a team effort, and while there's a lot of attention centered on us at this time, we're proud that we're in the position we're in, of course, but it's strictly a team effort all the way through.
Missile alarm, 1 minute, 15 seconds. Missile power, go. RF systems, go. Propulsion, go. AMR telemetry, go. Telemetry quality, go. Mercury capsule, go. 7 from Cape, how do you read? UHF? Roger, 60 seconds, unit. Roger, Roger, Captain. John, stand by to start EPI on my mark. Roger. 3, 2, 1, mark. Roger, EPI is started. Minus 45. Minus 40. Status check, pressurization. Go. Locks tanking. Control center recorders to fast speed. Helical retract now. Range operation. Go, clear to launch. Mercury capsule. Go. All pre-start panel lights are correct. The ready light is on. Eject Mercury umbilical. Oily Roger, scope is retracting. The scope is retracted, light is out. 18 seconds. All recorders valid DM on scope retract. Roger. You have may the wind winds be with you, Thomas. Good Lord, ride all the way. Godspeed, John Glenn. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Ignition. 3, 2, 1, 0. Roger. Liftoff. Liftoff. Operating. We're underway. Roger. Reading you loud and clear. License is range station. Liftoff. 1447. Bumpy along about here. That's Roger. Friendship spacecraft, Friendship 7, is in orbit with John Glenn at the controls. At the time of engine cutoff, the Atlas launch vehicle was approximately 503 statute miles away from its launch pad at Cape Canaveral. It was at an altitude of 100 miles. It was traveling at a speed of 17,530 miles. which is what? Indicating the landing bag is down. It's probably a failure, a malfunction of the micro switch. We had it valid here, and we also had it valid over at the hangar on TM. I would like to ask some of the other stations to look at it. They don't normally look at it.
Texas Capcom Pression 7. We are recommending that you leave the retro package on through the entire re-entry. This means that you will have to override the 05G switch, which is expected to occur at 0443. This also means that you will have to manually retract the scope. Do you read?
This is Friendship 7. What is the reason for this? Do you have any reason? Over?
Not at this time. This is the judgment of safe flight.
Ground, as most of you probably know, the ground telemetry receivers had picked up an impulse that we possibly had a loose heat shield. And for that reason, it was deemed advisable to keep the retro package in place during re-entry so that it would go ahead and burn off, but by that time we would be in a high enough aerodynamic force field to keep the heat shield in place in case it was in fact loose.
This is Friendship 7. I think the pack just let go. This is Friendship 7, a real fireball outside.
John sure did a beautiful job today. I've watched many a test pilot at work. I don't think I've seen a better job anywhere than John Glenn did today.
We have a long way to go in the space race. We started late, but this is the new ocean, and I believe the United States must sail on it and be in a position second to none. Some months ago, I said that I hoped that every American would serve his country. Today, Colonel Glenn served his, and we all express our thanks to him.
The flight after John's, which was MA6, was MA7, and Deke Slayton was assigned that flight. On the centrifuge, during the training period for that flight, Deke had an anomaly in his heart, which in conventional medical wisdom of that time was considered disqualifying. Deke was scratched. Wally was his backup, and by rights should have gotten the flight. I don't know who made the decision, but it was a NASA decision that since I had such an intimate relationship with the MA6, getting John ready to go, that I was better prepared to take the next flight than Wally was, the standby. I named it Aurora because I saw it as a celestial event. I liked the sound of it and the celestial significance. Turned out, as I was stowing equipment, banging the hatch on the side of the capsule just before retrofire, the fireflies started flying past the window, and I could make more flyby by banging the hatch. And it was little pieces of frost illuminated by the sun behind me at this time at sunrise. And they were just little ice crystals. And I figured, hooray, we know the answer to that question. I had the record for overshooting the target for a long time until some cosmonauts came along some years later and missed theirs by 1,500 miles. But there was an overshoot that caused a lot of dismay in the control center. And it was, if you talk to Chris Kraft about that, failure of the man. If you talk to me about it, it's a failure of the machine. Where the truth is, I don't know. There were 3 failures that were all additive. First of all, the retro rockets were slightly under thrust. They were late because of an attitude instrument failure, which really had not been discovered. There was no yaw check in the flight plan. Maybe there should have been, but we didn't expect that. All of these things added to an overshoot.
Roger, understand 1 hour.
The only living critter I had around for a long time was a gold-colored fish that had taken up residence under my life raft in the shade of the life raft. And I remember contemplating the marvelous experience and enjoying time to reflect on it. Curiosity is a thread that goes through all of my activity. I've been curious. I've also been frightened by the deep ocean. I wanted, number one, to learn about it, but number two, I wanted to get rid of what I felt was an unreasoned fear of the deep water. I was also inspired by what Cousteau had done. I saw a use for NASA technology in ocean technology, and first proposed to Cousteau that I come and share technology with his program. He said, well, we could use your experience, but you don't speak the right language, and we can't pay you very much. But he said, if you want to share technology with the ocean, do it with your own United States Navy, and that's how it happened.
This is Mercury Control. The time here at Cape Canaveral is 6:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The countdown for the attempted launch of the Sigma 7 spacecraft on the 5th U.S. manned spaceflight is T-minus 57 minutes and counting.
I think probably the best part of my Mercury mission was naming it Sigma 7, being a sum of engineering effort, not a fancy name like Freedom or Faith or Aurora. Not that I didn't appreciate those names, but I wanted to prove that there was a team of people working together to make this vehicle. But that's why I talked so wildly about knowing the engineers, how they were brothers and buddies, and all of them were. And that's what I saw as the ultimate on that mission, was an engineering test flight, where we weren't going to look around for fireflies, we weren't going to look for the lights of Perth, we weren't going to give prayers to the peasants below. We were going to make this thing work like a vehicle. And I never gave those messages when I flew a Mach 2 fighter. I flew the damn thing till I got done.
This is Mercury Control. The count is 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff.
I have liftoff. Clock is started. She feels real nice. You put your gear pins for this flight? Yeah, I got the pins on my office wall. I'll turn it off the page. Stand by for 20 seconds. Okay. Going to fly the wire low, going to fly the wire. That's fly the wire. Yours answering very nicely. Roll answers nicely. She's turning around very nicely.
Well, once we got into orbit, I realized I could take control of it. As I said, I do not want this to be an automatic control. What happened on John's flight and Scott's flight, as soon as I got into orbit, they separated and turned it around rapidly to get in the retro attitude so that the mission control could then have reassurance that they could bring it home. I'm not up there flying for mission control. I'm flying for old Watashi. So I separated and went off automatic and went and waited about 5 minutes and finally came around to the right attitude. And as a result, I ended up, I think, about retrofire, about 80% of my attitude fuel was still remaining.
Okay, I'm going to shove off for a relaxation period. Good show. I understand you're going to power down. That's affirmed. And I'll give you a readout on it so you can watch it. Find the fly-by-wire. Find the gyro's cage. Roger. Gyros are at 3 zeros at this time. Here. ASCS bus on. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I got one. And she's holding real tight. Very tight. I got 2. The attitudes are right on the money. I got 3. Very good. We confirm on TM. Retros 1, 2, and 3. Attitudes holding very well. A retro jettison switch to RM. Roger. There goes Rogue, and Maine is out. Oh, she's out beautiful. Nice blue sky. Maine is de-reefed, and looks like a sweetie pie. Oh, Roger. Sounds good, Gus. There's a beautiful shoot here. I want to get a good description out before we got into the drink here. I'm preparing for impact by disconnecting the visor hose.
Without a doubt, it's the finest flight we've had yet. The astronaut performed as well as any man, I think, could ever hope to perform. We set out with Wally to make sure that this was a truly an engineering flight. We wanted to prove that that man has a place in space, and I think we certainly did that yesterday.
The overall flight, I thought, was a textbook flight. We've had problems in the past, and they've been solved. I felt that I could go along and really let this machine do its own job. When I had jobs to do, I could concentrate on those. My intention was to use so little fuel that no one could argue that we had enough fuel aboard Sigma 7 for 18 orbits if we wanted it. I think I proved that point.
Well, they were saving me for the last and the best, I guess. We felt very strongly that we could develop a technique for flying a lot more efficient than leaving it on partial autopilot or all autopilot, that we could actually get onto the manual tweak mode and just tweak those thrusters and save a lot of fuel. And so Wally was trying this, and I was happy to get that information because it stood me in good stead then on my flight. The day before launch, and we had a real firm ground rule that we didn't put anything new into the spacecraft or into the pressure suit or anything that at the last minute that you could not adequately test. But the medics had overridden this very firm ground rule we had, and they cut a big hole in the side of my suit and inserted another great big metal fitting, which rubbed the heck out of my ribs, by the way. So I was being a little angry at the time. When I went out to get my fighter ready to go, I came back over the Cape and buzzed the Cape fairly low, and when Walt Williams happened to walk out of his office and almost fell flat because I was pretty low coming right by his window, lighting the afterburner. He was a little startled, and he was pretty teed off about it, I think. Well, Walt assured me several years later that he really wasn't going to pull me off, but he just wanted to worry me on it. Being the last, it was getting harder and harder to pick a name because everybody had picked pretty good names before. And it's kind of a lot of responsibility to pick a name for a spacecraft where it's before the eyes of the whole world. But I decided that I had a lot of faith in all my hardware and my spacecraft. I had a lot of faith in the launch team. I had faith in myself, and I had faith in God, and I thought that was just a real dilly of a name, so that became the name, Faith 7. Well, I had my work all done, and we had a built-in hole to get the range up to speed. I'd already been up several hours, so I thought that'd just be a good opportunity to get a little nap. So I took a little nap.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Roger, and a lift off, and the clock is operating. Sigma 7, Faith 7 on the way. Standing by to start the backup clock. Roger. 3, 2, 1, mark. Roger, and the backup clock is running.
The booster engine cutoff was just as I had thought it would be. Staging right on time. The entire sustainer flight was right on the money. It was a very, very smooth sustainer. There was no motion to it that I could detect at all, and I felt as if I was right out on the point of a needle being put right to the target. This is a new and strange environment at first, this suddenly finding yourself in orbit, and want to take a few seconds time to think about this and see just what you're doing up here. It takes you a few minutes to really settle down. The added distraction is that there is the Earth in view out of the window. It is a tremendous distraction. You want to glue your eyes on the window and watch every little detail of everything that's going on there. But the many hours of training in the simulators that we have seem to take over, and you get right back on the flight plan and follow pretty closely there and do the functions that you have planned on doing at the proper time.
I had a 0.05G green warning light came on, which is the light that tells you you're starting to re-enter. I was sure that I wasn't re-entering because there had been nothing to slow down my speed at all. And then we proceeded on the next orbit or so to try to go through various procedures to try to find what it was. And we realized I was slowly but surely I was having an electrical fire from my relays. And they did short out the inverters, and so eventually I lost my total electrical system.
Things are beginning to stack up a little. My SCS inverter is acting up. And my CO2 is building up in the suit. Partial pressure of O2 is decreasing in the cabin. Standby inverter won't come on the line. Other than that, things are fine.
The main chute is opening, so I was right over the carrier, and the wind drifted me about roughly 2 miles away, so they could just taxi over and put out a boom and hoist me on board, and I got out of the spacecraft right on the carrier then.